Welcome to the Urban Report. I'm Lee Bernick, Dean of the Greenspan College of Urban Affairs. And today we're going to be talking about economic development, and we have two guests. Our first guest is Terri Janison, and I want to welcome you to the Urban Report, and I appreciate you coming in.
My pleasure, thank you.
And Terri, you're the regional director for the Governor's Office of Economic Development. What does that mean?
It's a good question. We're still trying to figure out what that is, actually. There's two of us. Steve Hill is our state director, and then there are two regional directors. I'm in charge of the Las Vegas office, and Dana Bennett is in our Carson City office. So what we try to do is try to coordinate each one of those areas, and so that we can cover the whole state. So the job responsibilities right now are trying to coordinate the regional development authorities, run the office, do outreach, business retention, new business development. So it's kind of a gamut of things.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back to that and talk about all those different things, but let's talk about you first. You went to school at Western Kentucky, right?
Go Hilltoppers.
And the Hilltoppers. Are you from Kentucky originally?
Actually, my mother is. I grew up in southern Indiana.
Okay.
And went to school in Kentucky.
All right, and then you eventually found your way out here to Nevada, and you were on the school board, right, for 5 years,
Yes, sir.
I think that. And then you took the leap to work for the state government and for the governor. How has that changed? What's the difference between being this elected school board member to working for the governor?
Boy, it was a big leap, because I went from being an elected official to going to work for an elected official. But you know, when the governor of the state asks you if you want to come work for them, it's pretty hard to say no, but it's been a very exciting and challenging road. We've been in obviously for about 15 months now. So it's an interesting change. One of the things, you know, when you're elected, you're speaking for yourself. And when you work for someone who's elected, then you speak for them and their message. So very interesting and exciting.
And it was sort of hard to get the transformation, I mean, to realize that you actually are speaking for someone else.
You know, I knew going in that was going to be the case, and so it really hasn't been hard. But again, if you know me at all, I'm fairly opinionated, and especially working on the school board, you know, you had to be strong and have that voice to represent the people that put you in office. So, but it's been fine. He's a wonderful man, and he's good to work for.
Well, good. You know, we started out the show talking about what the job was about and about economic development. Last Tuesday, you were here on campus with Steve Hill, and I think we want to run a clip where Steve Hill is talking about what we're trying to do with regional development. And if I could get the people to run that clip, and then we can talk about what Steve is talking about.
That'd be great.
We would like to leverage that with private dollars. So we'll be working with the university system and all of you to hopefully help make that happen. And some of that's already taken place. You know, Neil has been at the forefront of this, as well as Mark Johnson and Steve Wells with UNR and DRI, and have already started hiring some of these research professors and aligning that research effort with the economic development effort so that we can not only come up with cool ideas, but they can produce cool businesses and great jobs.
So Steve is there talking about aligning with the universities and doing things, and he mentions cool businesses and great jobs. Can you talk about what are cool businesses, or what kinds of businesses we're trying to attract to Nevada, and then what kind of jobs might be out there for us?
Well, you know what's interesting, that's really a two-pronged question there. So the kind of jobs that we're looking for I can address, and we've identified through the Brookings report and SRI on the 7 sectors that we want to try to focus in on, which includes aerospace and defense, green energy, medical health. So there's 7 different of those sectors. So that's what we are working on. But I think specifically what Mr. Hill was referring to is, and this is what I'm very excited about, because my passion is education. And so the collaboration that we're seeing with our department and the university system, the K-12 system, DRI, and the programs that are going on already, we've never really collaborated very well. And so we're going to turn that around. And we want to have those conversations and make sure that all the work that's going on, both from a research standpoint, as well as the students who are doing some work. I toured the College of Engineering and Dr. Venkat's group and what he was putting out in some of those programs and manufacturing items. And Those are the things that we want to see how we can partner with the university system, make those cool jobs, and then possibly start new businesses from that. So that's what he was referring to.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know that you've been talking to people. You were down with people in Arizona. Do you see any linkages with the people from the state of Arizona working with us on these kind of jobs?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you asked that because I went down to Laughlin. I was invited by the Economic Development and the Chamber of Commerce of Laughlin to come down, and they invited the economic development individuals from Arizona. So they've already got a regional development cooperation going on down there because of Laughlin does not have a hospital. I did not know that. They use the hospital in Bullhead, Arizona. So the collaboration that's already going on down there on a regional level just kind of opened my eyes to what we're trying to do in this state regionally. The region here in Clark County is one, but you know, Laughlin is 100 miles from us, and so they're a lot closer to Arizona. So the possibilities, I think, are going to be endless. So that was new for me this morning to realize some of the other things that could potentially happen with our state, and not just build regionally for Nevada, but build it with Arizona, Utah, California as well.
Okay. When we talk about those things, and we were talking about businesses in the different sectors, where do you think the best chance for us, and what are you seeing when you talk to people about coming to Nevada?
You know, that's really a wide open question. I'm going to go back to the Brookings report because I think that was such a guideline for us, and it helped us write our state plan about where we want to go. So we will focus in on those 7 sectors. We have hired actually individuals right now to head up the aerospace and defense, which that is going to be, I truly believe, a really good one for us to focus in on quickly. And Tom Wilczek is that individual, and he's already moving at light speed. We've hired technology specialist, and we're currently looking at a healthcare and a mining and manufacturing, and we also have logistics and distribution. So I can't really say specifically on certain companies because a lot of that is until they sign on the dotted line. I can't really talk about it, but those truly are the industries where we see the most growth. One I've learned too is that we've got somewhat of a reputation about not having a good healthcare system here, but I think we've got more than we realize. And so if we can pull in what we truly have and get everybody to the table and start telling that message better, it's the same thing I talk about our university systems. We've got amazing things happening in our university systems. I'm just not sure that we're telling our story well enough. So I think it's up to us as a state to make sure that both from a business standpoint and an education, that we talk about our strengths and pull up our weaknesses.
Okay, and if we talk about those strengths, and we talked about the university, to what extent do you think that, and what's the role of the university for you? And we started out the show talking about that, but and you talked about going over to the engineering college. How do you see the universities playing out? I mean, we are under, in a sense, producing right now, right? The number of bachelor degrees. I think that's one of our problems in right now in the state, is that we don't have the same level of education that some other states have.
Well, and so what I'm finding as I go out and I speak to these businesses, I toured a manufacturing firm the other day that does the motherboards and the computer chips for aerospace and defense. And so what we heard from them that was that they don't have the quality workforce that they are looking for, both from an engineering standpoint and also just from the tech standpoint. So what I think that we're going to be able to do is talk to these companies that are here, find out what their needs are, communicate with our K-12 and higher ed system about what those needs are so that we can get the students who graduate or even are unemployed, retrain them to those positions and get them back to work. So it's, to me, a collaboration of finding out what the needs are for the business, finding out and connecting with to the education system to ensure that we're training our individuals to the best of our ability. We have lost and are losing too many of our best and brightest because we don't have the jobs available for them here. I'd like to think that our department is going to help in turning that around.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we're going to have to cut this a little bit short here, and we'd like to have you back and see in another few months to see how we're doing on this, but that's a particularly good part to stop on, and that's the relationship between the university and the state and working together for economic development, because I think that's what the university is about, helping to grow the state. And I appreciate you coming on to the show, and hope to have you back again.
Thank you.
In a few minutes, we're going to be coming in with Robert Lang from the Brookings Mountain West here at UNLV and talk about economic development and the role that Terri talked about in terms of how Brookings has helped plan economic development for the state.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thanks.
I'm Jessica Mendoza, U.S. Olympic gold and silver medalist. I never take my eyesight for granted, and neither should you. Doesn't matter how old you are, you could be losing your vision to glaucoma without knowing it. Take care of your sight. Schedule regular eye exams for yourself and those you love. Call 1-800-437-2423 or go to ahaf.org for free information and publications from National Glaucoma Research.
Well, welcome back. We're back here at the Urban Report, and we have our next guest, which is Robert Lang. Robert Lang is the head of the Brookings Mountain West, and we are glad you're here with us. Rob, why don't you tell us first about how you got here in a short, abbreviated form, and then we can start talking about the role of Brookings Mountain West in economic development.
Well, how does anyone get to Las Vegas? No, I'm just kidding. I was actually a specialist in the region, even though I was at Virginia Tech ahead of this, as you know, and I was in Alexandria, Virginia. And part of my subject area was the fast-growing Sunbelt cities of the West. And so I, actually picked the city, and I picked it at a time where I knew actually things had turned down. And so I got in, feet first, knew what I was getting into, and it's been wonderful. I love the place, actually.
Well, we are glad that you're here. We appreciate the fact and all the work that you're doing with Brookings Mountain West. And Brookings Mountain West has just had a real, taken a real toehold to the state. You've produced, along with SRI, a roadmap that Terri Janison was talking about. It's called Unify, Regionalize, and Diversify. It's a plan, economic development plan for the state. First, let me just ask you, what's the relationship between Brookings Mountain West and the Metropolitan Program with SRI? How did SRI come in, and what's their role in this, and how does it help with that?
Well, SRI is a well-known firm. In fact, if you've got Siri in your cell phone, SRI put it there. In Menlo Park, that unit did, but the politics and policy unit are in Arlington, Virginia, and they're actually partners with Brookings on a couple of projects in the past. And including places like Tampa Bay's plan. So they're well known, they do great work, and we're simpatico. And the relationship of Metro is that from 1996, I was associated with the Brookings Metro Policy Center. It was then the Urban and Metro Center. And the big share of what we're doing out here, economic development, urban growth, are tied to that Metro Center back in D.C.
And I think what's interesting is that the governor you wrote this report, and the governor has actually just accepted this almost completely as a plan for how we move forward. And I know that they've modified and came up with a plan for the state, and Steve Hill introduced that along with the governor several weeks ago. But one of the things in that plan, and something that Terri talked about, are these 7 different areas where we should be promoting growth, and when there's a potential for growth. You want to talk about those and how we identified those, or how you identified those?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned the governor's buy-in was in part because from the beginning his staff was engaged and Steve Hill was engaged. So these 7 sectors did not come as a mystery, and in fact, that report rather is 179 pages. There's about 500 pages available online through Brookings that shows all the background work of picking those sectors. And if the sectors strike you as, I'm pretty sure we knew they were here, well, that's good, because these sectors are not aspirational. They're not the economy, that Brookings or SRI or the state wishes it had. It's the economy it has. And these are, the big point here is about leverage. It's about, where are the sectors that are underperforming, like healthcare, where you can make improvements? Where are the sectors you need to build strength in, like tourism, because it's a core, and you can't ignore it, because if you have that core contract, the whole region's in trouble. And then what are the opportunity sectors? You know, places like aerospace and specific subsets of that. Aerospace meaning drones, meaning, you know, pilotless aircraft, and IT, which is tied to the ramp up of the Strip and so on.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned the, before we talk about aerospace, you talked about tourism and you also talked about healthcare. And I know one of the things that we've talked about and the state's talked about is medical tourism, right? And that people would come here, hopefully, at some point. You want to,
Sure.
what the idea is?
Well, first off, we're the medical tourists in California. So let's start with who's a medical tourist. But they don't refer to us that way. They talk of us as out of system or out of state. As we get our medicine straight, and our medicine's not straight in this one sense, there's a way to calculate what you'd predict to be the medicine in the region. And you look at how many elderly are in the city, how big the city is, how wealthy the city is, and you peg it to what you'd say is the sort of average for U.S. metros. And we're only in the 60-something% of that. Now, to put that in perspective, this is how big scale that is. It's about 5% of the entire region's gross metropolitan product is missing. It's about the equivalent of a healthy year in housing. That's substantial. So getting this to the scale of where it reflects the true metro scale, where it reflects 2 million residents as opposed to 1.3 million residents, that goes a long way towards promoting something like medical tourism because, you know, first, physician heal thyself, you know, region heal thyself. The opportunities for medical tourism aren't bad after that because of how large the hotels are. We have direct air service. You know, a partner like Cleveland Clinic, there's a risk in a place like Cleveland right now for them to lose the hub airport because of the merger of Continental and United. Well, if they do that, it's going to be a lot tougher to draw in people from all over the Midwest and the East because they're going to lose direct flights. They're going to be like Pittsburgh or St. Louis. We offer that opportunity. Tourism is the gift that keeps on giving. It's all the access points into the country, and it would include medical tourism.
So one of the things, though, that you mentioned two things here that I think are important for us. If our medical area and that dimension were working to where it should be, we'd have a lot more jobs for people here in Clark County. Right?
Oh, yeah. I can give you the number on that even.
Okay, and so that's important. I mean, thousands of jobs, is that right?
Thousands.
Thousands of
Yes.
jobs. And of course, once we get ramped that up, whether it's through getting a medical school or some other kinds of things happening down here, then there's the potential for other people to come here because of our transportation system and the fact that we have direct flights and there's easy access to Vegas on that. So I think that's important. I mean, if we could just, part of the growth for our state would be just to be where we should be.
Yes.
Right?
It's not inventing new technologies. You know, diversification means actually right-sizing industries that in the rush to build our big city we left behind. Adding that medicine also means biotech. So there's even spin-offs off medicine. And what's nice about medicine is that employment occurs across the entire range of income. There is people who are doing maintenance. There are people running machinery that's well-paying. There's research scientists that work in biotech. There's physicians. And to give you a perspective, if we fully ramped, it would be about 40,000 jobs. If you got just halfway there, it would be about 20,000. And that's the first round of aspiration is to, perhaps we'll always lag in that sector. But you don't have to lag in the 60s. You could lag in the 80s. By contrast, by the way, Reno has about the medicine it should have.
Okay. So the growth is here in Clark County with our 2 million people on it. Let's talk about something else. And part of this whole thing with the report and what we're seeing happening with the report and with the governor's office is a function of a piece of legislation that came out of the state legislature, a bipartisan piece of legislation, AB 449. Can you talk about how that works and how that's helped transform our discussions on economic development?
Sure. It actually, interestingly, passed in the last 10 seconds of the legislature. So it came in just under the wire. And what it did is it authorized a whole new platform for economic development. It lifted economic development to the governor's office, gave a direct report on economic development to the governor, and then is an effort also to reorganize not just the planning effort and the research effort, but the actual administrative governance effort by looking at regions in a larger scale instead of each little municipality competing against one another. And you see this in the north, most recently the sort of central development authority and the sort of fringe development authority signed a memorandum of understanding and are going to unite, and it's likely that a common RDA will come into existence in the north. The northeast, 5 or 6 counties that are built on ag and mining are talking to one another and probably going to do an RDA. We'll do an RDA in the south that'll be comprehensive for all of Las Vegas
All right,
and our partners.
let me stop for a second, because you're using a word here, an acronym here. An RDA. So an RDA means what?
Pardon my jargon. Regional Development Authority.
Okay, and these regional development authorities, we're going to have one maybe up in the northeast part of the state, one maybe in the Carson City, Reno, and one hopefully down here, right? That's generally the plan on these. And they're going to be doing what now? I mean,
Yeah, I'd say we'll have 3 to 5. What they're supposed to be doing is coordinating efforts at the regional scale. Our economy is not a state economy, it's regional economies. And so you have mining and ag in the northeast, you have Las Vegas's large-scale tourism economy in the south. These are the real connection points to the globe. You know, the northeast part of the state through mining, for example, directly connects to places like Zurich, Switzerland, where they refine the gold into, you know, into luxury goods. We connect to the globe through our airport, through our overseas tourists. That's the space and scale. That's the purpose of organization, is that there's not these little pieces, you know, below that scale. Henderson is in the economy with Las Vegas. You know, Henderson can have its own interests and directions within that frame. It doesn't mean you shut out locality, but what it means is that you coordinate all that effort the way they do in places like Denver. The whole Front Range of the Rockies is cooperating, and that's a bigger space to connect to the global economy too.
all right. So I think we just have a few more seconds here before we have to quit the show tonight. But we see these regional development authorities. We see your plan from Brookings and SRI, and the kind of joint relationship here to help grow the economy of the state, and especially here in Clark County. Is there one major thing you think that will help us move along on that?
In terms of the plan itself?
The plan itself.
Yeah, I would say that the 2 key plays for Las Vegas are IT and medicine, and that I would put, you know, most of the focus in there. And that's not to say that aerospace, which is something that we're good at and is potentially lucrative, isn't important. It's that I think the big play is IT and medicine.
IT and medicine. Okay, and which, here's what I guess I would say is that both of those are connected to the university system, right? And we want the university to be integral in terms of the economic development of our state, in our area.
Yes, one of our biggest deficits is that we're the largest state in the union without a single top-tier research university.
Well, we hope to correct that in the near future. And Rob, thanks for coming in, and we'll have you again, often, I hope, talking about where we are and about Brookings Mountain West. And I want to thank you for watching the Urban Report. If you have any ideas and comments about what we ought to be talking about on the Urban Report, please contact us at UNLV and at the Greenspan College of Urban Affairs. Again, thank you for watching the Urban Report.